Okay, so today I'm going to be changing the fuse in my Super Nintendo Mini, which has died, and I had a power supply go bad and fry the fuse in it 3 times in a row. So I'm out of the actual fuse that goes into the Super Nintendo Mini. So I have an extra Super Nintendo that's just been laying here for a while that doesn't work at all, but it has a good fuse as far as I remember. So we're going to take this fuse off, modify it so it fits into the Mini, and we'll see if it works. On the original Super Nintendo, the fuse is a bar, which is this guy right here. It's labeled on the board as F1. It's right beside the power switch where the leads come in from that, which I've also already taken out. Looks like that. Plugs in there. It's no big deal. And I'll show you the one for the Mini, which I've already modified one of these to replace, so I actually won't show you the original. But I can show you how I wired that one, so that's fine. Before I take this fuse off, I need to make sure that it actually works. So what we're going to do is test the continuity. So I got my multimeter set on continuity. You can hear it beep if it connects. See, it works. So test the fuse, beeps, we're good to go. Most people, when they're desoldering, like to use Chem Wick or something to that effect to wick away the solder. For something like this, where you've got so much solder, you would usually use a desoldering iron. I don't have one of those because they're expensive. I much prefer just having a desoldering pump and your standard soldering iron. Works the same way as a desoldering pump, except it's a lot easier. You don't have to like squeeze a bulb or any of that nonsense. So here we go. Just heat it up, get nice and smooth. Just suck the solder away. Toss the old solder there. That's nice and fun. That's actually probably my favorite part of using this thing. Is sometimes the solder comes out in these little chunks, and it's a lot of fun to pull it off. So I got one side off. I'm gonna grab my handy dandy ginormous square pliers. Just heat up a little bit more. Pull it up just a bit. And once you got one side up, the other side is much easier to take off. You do want to use pliers when you do this because this thing gets very hot and it will burn the ever-living crap out of you. I'm not even in the camera. There we go, in the camera. So this is the fuse. One of the reasons I'm using this as opposed to the actual fuse that goes in the Mini is this is about a nickel, if that. The ones that go in the Mini are a couple dollars, so I'm cheap. It is what it is. So, got the Mini here. We do need to take off this heat shield before we get started because the fuse is actually in there, and we'll need to take this off to get to it as a soldering iron. I've tried to do it before with the heat shield on. It doesn't work. Don't try it. It's not going to happen. So now we've gotten the heat shield off, you can see that this is one that I've modified to use the Genesis plug because the original plug had broken. Very common problem all the Super Nintendos. That original plug they used was just terrible. But it uses the same voltage as the Genesis, and you can use that universal plug. It's a lot easier to do. The original fuse went down here. It went from this point to this point. The original fuse in this one actually tore off the pad on the circuit board. Not sure when it did that, but that's when I found out the fuse actually was bad. So what I've done is I've patched the fuse from the original contact point to the C1 terminals, which is optional on these. Some of them have I think it's a 1,000 farad capacitor or microfarad capacitor here. This one doesn't. It's not a problem. It wasn't actually needed. Some have them, some don't. Depends on the production year. But the way the path goes to the voltage regulator goes through this same contact point. So instead of it connected to the original pad, I just have it patched over to the next place where the circuit goes anyway. And I have tried that. It does work fine. And you can see where I've had my little janky connection with the original connector there already, which is what we're going to be copying today. So to do this, the way we're going to do is use the new fuse, bend over the bottom leg, secure a small patch wire to the top leg, which reconnects to the circuit board. So we're going to reuse the same piece of wire if it doesn't melt all the way through, which we're going to use Mr. Helpy Hands here to help us with that. Clamp here. And it shouldn't be much more. Oh look, some more of that fun solder stuff. Boop. Should just come right off. There it goes. All right, I'm gonna drop the old one, put in the new one. You still see me?
Mm-hmm.
Patch it back in there. All right, we just add a little bit more solder back to make it connect. I always like to blow it a little bit, make sure it cools off nicely, because if it doesn't cool off evenly, it's a very fragile solder, and that's not good. So that should be fine. And we'll just let it cool off just a sec. Grab some pliers and bend the leg over to make it easier to solder onto that pad on the board. All right, and we're ready to put it back in the board.
Good.
All right, so we got it plugged in. Let's see if it works. I'm going to connect to the sleeve, which is the power. It would help if I turned on my multimeter. Let's try that again. All right, looks like we're good to go. We'll be plugging this up to the TV in just a second and see if this thing actually works. All right, so the TV turned on. These horrible, horrible squealing tube TVs, but they make the picture look so much better on old consoles. And I don't have an upscaler. I don't plan to get one because they are very, very expensive. I've got the Raspberry 64 chilling up here, hanging out on this TV. So we're just going to use its plug because it uses the standard Super Nintendo plug. Power, we've got this god-awful 2-in-1 power supply. Don't buy these things. They're terrible. They short out your stuff. I have had 5 or 6 systems that these things just randomly go out on, blow the fuses. They're terrible. Don't buy them. I have them. It is what it is. Plug in the power. We should know real quick if this turns on or not because I have a LED in mine because I modded it. Power comes on nicely. So let's see if it actually plays a game. I have Vegas Stakes, terrible game. I'm actually going to be using it later on for a ROM swap when I'm actually going to take the ROM out of this and put a different game's ROM in it. Don't know if I'm actually going to do that or not. It's been on my list to do for over a year, so we'll see. Fire it up and we'll see what happens. In theory, we should have a picture on the TV. So after doing some troubleshooting and finding out that my multi-tap switch here is completely dead and does absolutely nothing except for run static to the TV, throw that in the junk pile, went directly to the TV and we are good to go. And this game is absolutely terrible. But it works. All we have to do now is put it back together.